The war in Ukraine has devastated Russia in ways few could have predicted, leaving not only a trail of military failures, but also an economic collapse and a severely damaged global reputation. How did this conflict flip the script for Russia? What exactly went wrong and what's next for the country? Stick around as we break down the real impact this war has had on Russia. Is Russia on the edge of collapse, or is there still hope for recovery? Let's unpack it and find out together. The war in Ukraine has been a global crisis that has sent shockwaves through Russia, affecting almost every aspect of the country. The damage goes far beyond the obvious military struggles. It's also causing deep economic pain, political instability, and social challenges that Russia wasn't prepared for. So, what has this war truly cost Russia? Thousands of lives lost, along with a significant amount of military equipment. Economic devastation due to sanctions and the crumbling of global energy markets. A military force that is weaker than ever, losing its grip on global influence, rising inflation, social unrest, and a shrinking workforce. Before the war, Russia's oil and gas industries were one of the main engines of its economy. Russia was one of the largest exporters of energy, and the money flowing from these resources funded everything, from the government's budget to military spending. But when the war began, everything changed. The European Union, which had been one of Russia's largest customers for oil and gas, hit back with heavy sanctions, including bans and price caps. This cut off a crucial revenue stream for Russia. In an attempt to compensate, Russia reduced its gas exports to Europe, hoping this would drive prices higher. But that strategy backfired. Without Europe to rely on, Russia couldn't find enough new buyers, and its energy revenues dropped significantly. Looking further down the line, the world is increasingly moving toward greener energy. This means that demand for fossil fuels like oil and gas is expected to fall, and Russia's reliance on these industries will only become a bigger problem in the future. The reality for Russia is clear. It is losing its grip on the global energy market, and the financial situation is likely to worsen as the world transitions to more sustainable energy sources. Russia has long been a key player in the global arms trade, exporting weapons to countries like China, Egypt, and others across Africa and the Middle East. These sales were vital for Russia's economy and its geopolitical influence. However, that market is shrinking fast. Why is this happening? First, sanctions have made it much harder for Russia to maintain its position in the arms market. But it's not just the sanctions. There's also a growing lack of trust in the quality of Russian military equipment. Countries that once turned to Russia are now looking elsewhere. Take China and Egypt, for example. These nations were once big customers, but they've reduced their purchases from Russia. In Africa, countries that used to rely on Russian weapons are increasingly turning to China and other suppliers. And the war in Ukraine is only making things worse. With so many of Russia's resources tied up in the conflict, it doesn't have the ability to produce new weapons for export. So, Russia's weapons industry is getting hit on both sides. The global market is shrinking, and the country can't produce enough to keep up with demand. But perhaps the most significant impact of the war is the toll it's taken on Russia's economy. The ruble, Russia's currency, has lost much of its value. This has created huge problems for both domestic and international trade. The value of the ruble's collapse means that imports have become more expensive, making everyday goods unaffordable for many Russians. Inflation has skyrocketed, leading to rising costs of living. The government has responded by raising interest rates, but this hasn't been enough to stabilize the economy. What makes this even worse is that the Russian government has been pouring vast amounts of money into the war effort. This spending spree means less money for other essential areas like healthcare, education, and infrastructure, making life even harder for ordinary citizens. In the long term, Russia faces a massive challenge in rebuilding its economy. The loss of oil and gas revenue, combined with the immense cost of the war, means the country will need years, if not decades, to recover from this economic catastrophe. The war has exposed some serious flaws in Russia's military. High casualties and the destruction of advanced military equipment have highlighted just how vulnerable Russia's military is. What's even more concerning is that Russia is struggling to replace all the lost personnel and equipment. The country's ability to produce military goods has been severely limited, and international sanctions have made it even harder to access the materials needed to rebuild the military. Russia is also becoming increasingly dependent on foreign nations for military support. Iran and North Korea have stepped in to help Russia with supplies, but this dependence shows just how much Russia's military strength has weakened. Meanwhile, NATO has only become stronger in response to Russia's actions. As Russia's power diminishes, NATO has strengthened its defense capabilities and increased its presence in Europe. This has made it even harder for Russia to maintain its influence on the global stage. But the damage doesn't stop with the economy and military. The war has also had a devastating effect on Russia's population. The conflict has led to a significant loss of life, especially among soldiers. But that's not the only problem. Many young, talented Russians have left the country, fleeing conscription or escaping the economic hardships that have followed the war. This brain drain is depriving Russia of the talent it needs to innovate and rebuild. On top of that, Russia's population is aging and birth rates are low. This demographic shift, combined with the outflow of young people, is worsening Russia's long-term social and economic stability. With fewer people to contribute to the workforce and more people living on pensions, Russia faces a future that looks increasingly uncertain. Social unrest is also a growing concern, as the Russian population becomes more disillusioned with the government's inability to improve their situation. So what's the bottom line? Russia is facing a steep and multifaceted decline. The economy is in shambles, with sanctions, collapsing oil markets, and skyrocketing inflation. The military is weaker than ever before, struggling to maintain its global power. The population is shrinking, and social instability is on the rise. The big question remains, can Russia recover from all of this? Or has the war fundamentally weakened the country beyond repair? The consequences of the war in Ukraine are far-reaching, reshaping not just Russia, but the entire global landscape. It's unclear what the future holds, but one thing is certain. Russia's path to recovery will be incredibly difficult. The road ahead is long, and the challenges are immense. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's continue the conversation. Until next time, stay informed and take care.